Raw Peace is the directorial feature debut from Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is well known as an actor in films like 12 Years a Slave, but this marks his first time behind the camera for a feature-length project. The film is based off the real-life story of Raw Peace, who was an African-American man who went to Yale, was brilliant, but due to life circumstances, ultimately lived only into his 20s. His father was imprisoned for a double murder early on in his life, and as the film mentions, that was the moment that Raw Peace lost his childhood. This is essentially a story of dual identity, a story of code switching before that term kind of came into our cultural zeitgeist. It's a story of a man who lives authentically as himself despite weaving and veering between seemingly different worlds. Raw Peace is played by Chiwetel, who is wonderful in this role. There are other strong performances from Chiwetel himself, who plays Raw Peace's imprisoned father, and also Mary J. Blige, who also serves as an executive producer on this film. I had the opportunity to listen to Chiwetel speak in a conversation with Jesse Eisenberg at Sundance, and you can tell from the second that he speaks how intelligent, how thoughtful, how articulate of a man he is. This story is interesting, I think, to anyone, but through Chiwetel's eyes, it becomes really fascinating. When he was speaking at this conversation, he said something that some other directors have also mentioned about finding the universal in the specific. This is the story of a black man fitting in an Ivy League school, selling drugs on the side to help fund lawyers to try to get his father out of prison. A seemingly very specific story, but as we dive deeper and deeper into Raw Peace, we see the universal. We see the power of family. We see the conflicting identities that exist within all of us to varying degrees. As Chiwetel has said, Raw Peace is aware that he's existing in a space that doesn't want him to be proud. He makes decisions not as overt acts of defiance, but as reflexes. For example, the moment that he wears his do-rag into the prestigious Yale laboratory. He's not necessarily doing this to defy expectations or to make a statement, but he's doing it because he has no choice but to live authentically as himself in all of these spaces. He brings together these different groups that otherwise would never interact, and that was the person who Chiwetel is trying to show us as Raw Peace. It's an emotional journey. It's also beautifully shot, some interesting choices when it comes to lighting and color grading that really transmit an emotional tone to the audience without being too on the nose. So that's quite an accomplishment in itself for a first-time feature director. There are so many ups and downs, twists and turns in this film that I think it's very difficult to not be engaged. The one kind of storyline that didn't quite connect with me was the romantic angle between Rob Peace and his romantic interest. It felt to me almost like it distracted from the more important narratives, as if there's an understanding that in any film you need romance. The film was at its strongest when it explored both the relationship between Rob Peace and his father, and also the relationship with Rob Peace and the environments that he was existing in when he was at Yale versus when he was with his friends from the neighborhood, and the inherent tensions that were kind of pulling him in one direction or another. Chiwetel himself puts forward a tremendous performance, again, not too surprising, as he is generally regarded as a very strong performer. He is able to play Rob Peace's father with tremendous depth and emotion, and during the conversation that he had with Jesse Eisenberg, he admitted that he probably couldn't have had anyone else play the role because he had such a clear idea in his mind of how his father should be portrayed. As an actor putting on the director cap for the first time in a project of this scale, he said that one of his main areas of focus was ensuring that every actor has a voice. He spoke how, as an actor, sometimes on set you're not sure where you fit in with the overall narrative, and he wanted to make sure that every actor knew who they were and why they were there. And it's evident that this was the case. There isn't, I would say, a weak performance here, and as Chiwetel said himself, it was a symphony. It was all of these different voices coming together to prop up Rob Peace's overall story. Obviously, Rob Peace being a real person, you can do a quick Google search and find out how this story ends, but I would recommend watching the film and seeing everything unfold live on screen if you don't already know the story. This is another one that's still seeking distribution, but fingers crossed we'll get a wider release sometime this year.